So OPPO is back now with another foldable. We didn't get the Find N4, but we have here now the Find N5, and they put a lot of innovation into this. It's got some big changes, and yes, I know we've heard this before, but at the time of this video, it is the world's thinnest by foldable at 4.12 millimeters only when unfolded, which is really impressive, and 8.93 millimeters when folded. It does have a silicon carbon battery that's got 10% silicon content. And I saw this in London. It's extremely thin, the two batteries, which makes up that 5,600 milliamp hours. We get 80 watt super VOC charging, 50 watt wireless. It also has IPX6, IPX8, and IPX9 water resistances to it. Unlike other brands, OPPO does include a charger in the box. So it is our 80 watt Super VOC charger, fully charges the phone in just 47 minutes. We have a case, and this does protect the rear of the phone, the corners, and the spine. However, there is no second half to this case included, so no protection for the frame of the front of the phone. And we have the Type-C to Type-A cable, some paperwork, and a SIM tray tool. The Find N5 is using what's called their Cosmos ring here for the camera module, the design. And this is now 40% slimmer than the previous generation. Dual tone LED flash, microphone. This is our ultra wide. Now, the ultra wide's 8 megapixels, and it is the weaker camera out of these rear cameras here. You'll see that later on when I get onto the camera samples and video performance too as well. 3 times optical periscopic camera, and this is our 50 megapixel main camera there too. So it feels very premium, and I like the silver we get around the frame here. Now the hinge feels excellent. It's really good. And look at how thin this phone is. So it is only 4.21 millimeters when open. And you look at this thickness here, you see that it's just a little bit thicker than a euro. This is the euro coin right here. And when this is folded, this is just measuring here. That is only 8.93 millimeters. So we do have microphones down here on the bottom. There's dual loudspeakers. Display out does support video out, and it takes 2 nano SIMs. Up the top, we have that other speaker, and there is an IR transmitter on this too. Great to see that that has not been removed. The alert slider is there too, so very good. So you can put that easily into just the general mode. You can put it onto vibration and then completely silent without having to turn on the screen. The outer screen, so this here is a screen that does have a very good brightness to it. So this one gets up to, when it's just in the sun, that is, it's going to get up to a peak of 1400 nits. HDR content is 2100 nits there, and this outer screen is 6.62 inches. It's using their nano crystal glass, which is now 20% stronger. So that fingerprint reader, capacitive, let me test that. Very good location of it. And I still am someone that prefers, with the foldable at least, to have this capacitive, always on fingerprint reader. Why? Because I find sometimes the optical is a little bit more difficult to get to, especially with the foldable. I know some brands have ultrasonic on the outer and then the inner one, but not here, and it still works really well. Now let me talk about that, what they call the invisible crease. It's now 10% narrower, and the big one is it's 50% shallower. So I'll get it in the light where I can show you that look at how this crease is. It's barely even there. In fact, it looks worse than what it really is. Let's compare that to another phone here. I have a Huawei Mate X6, and the X6 here, okay, this has quite a bit of a crease, and it's probably a little bit better than the Z Fold 6's crease, but it's very noticeable. You do see that there, and especially when I turn the screen off, yes, it makes itself present. You see that, but look at that side by side compared to the Find N5, just so much better. So this screen a little bit larger now, so we've got the 8.12 inches. It's really a beautiful looking screen. It's 120 hertz, and we are running Color OS with this based on Android 15. Does have their anti-shock layer on this film. It's now 70% stronger than the previous version. 1400 nits with this screen, and it peaks at 2100. And under display, I'll just show you a few of the settings. So we do have eye comfort mode, adaptive tone, and you've got image sharpener right there, and the refresh rate. So is there a 90 hertz option? You can see when I have it lying flat here that we're getting a little bit of rocking when I'm typing on it. and you can set it to 60 or 120. So unfortunately, there is no in-between mode. Now, the pulse width modulation is 2160, okay? So it's a very high rate there, and I'm not seeing any flickering. Gestures work really well. Animation's very smooth, and of course, the Snapdragon 8 Elite that's within this is helping, and the UFS 4.0 storage, and the 16 gigabytes of RAM means everything loads in very, very smooth here. And there's our apps drawer. So a really nice display to use. I think it's probably one of the best I've seen in a foldable to date. Now, when you get the phone, it does have a bit of pre-installed bloatware. You can see those apps right there. Now, this is quite lenient compared to other brands out there that I cover that can go a bit overboard with creating different category folders and just pre-installing a lot of junk. Not so much here with ColorOS and OPPO, which is good to see. There is a widevine level 1 cert, so Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, Disney Plus, all in full HD, which is what you want. And we do have a level 3 here with camera API, so third-party camera apps are supported with this phone, giving you full access to those cameras. Storage, very quick, that 512 gigabytes of storage, as expected for UFS 4 spec. It does perform really well. The important one here is the random speeds, random access, and that is really high. So no bottlenecks from the storage at all. And we get an Antutu score that for a Snapdragon 8 Elite looks a little on the low side. And it's because of the first one being just 7 cores instead of the 8. So we lose out a bit on the multi-core performance. And because it's so thin, they do throttle this device a lot. All foldables, including Samsung's and everyone else's, there's quite a bit of throttling that takes place. But just how bad is it with the Find N5? Well, we lose 45, almost 45% performance here, drop from the beginning of the test till after 20 minutes, the lowest. So the stability score is a bit low, but most of the other foldables I do cover will drop down, and even slab style phones, to about 60-65%. It's a very hot chip, the Snapdragon 8 Elite. And this is the reason I think why they decided to go with a 7-core version. These are still very good scores, but yes, we do lose a bit of performance. There is quite a bit of throttling there that does take place. And you'll see that the temperatures, well, up to 45 degrees here with it, which is okay. It gets a little warm around the frame. But if it got up to 50, 53, which I've seen with some other phones that I do cover, they get incredibly hot. One of them was the Mix Fold from Xiaomi, the Mix Fold 2, I think. They got up to 53 degrees. It would end up closing down applications to cool itself. Not going to happen here. OPPO's approach is to throttle the chipset quite a bit to maintain those temperatures, which do not go over 45 degrees Celsius. Battery life, excellent. So this is running the inner screen here, and why I do that with foldables is because that's the screen you're probably going to be using the most. It also consumes the highest amount of energy, and getting just over 9 hours is a top score here for a foldable. Very good for the battery, and of course you fully charge that 5,600 milliamp hour battery in just 47 minutes, and we do have the 50 watt wireless charging as well, which takes close to an hour to finish. In fact, just over an hour. Now, using the phone with the outer screen, I find to be a breeze. And yes, you can use it one-handed. It's not too bad, apart from typing, but you can make the keyboard a little bit smaller, resize that for one-handed typing. But I'll just go along here and quickly type on this outer screen and just show you that typing is fine. I like it. It's a lot better than the Z Fold 6 here. And of course, when you open it up, it's even better than 2 as well to be able to use that and type. I find this is where I do like it, to use the inner screen. If you're going to be typing a lot, you want to use that inner screen and bring that up. Now, the haptics on it, they're not particularly strong pulses. You hear it actually more than you really feel it, I would say. But it's nice for typing, at least with the keyboard. And the other haptics in it with phone calls is okay. I would rate it as very average. I wish that the motor was a little bit stronger, and there's probably a limitation with that because of the size of this phone and being so thin. The haptics, I feel, was limited or is limited because of that. Multitasking capabilities is something that you'll probably be buying a Fold just for that. So you can run a lot of applications, of course, in full screen, split screen. I've got Netflix open, and you can see we get some pretty bad borders top and bottom because the aspect ratio is not good for a foldable here because it's 16:9 or 21:9 content. However, if I tap here, I can decide to run this in the split screen mode if I go here. Okay, and then I can also pop up something else. I can have the video right here. I've got Google Play right open there with the apps. I can tap here and make this floating window, as well if I wanted to. And you can open up several different apps at the same time. You can resize them all, as you can see. And this is pretty good, right? You can do all this and you can multitask. Now, when you start to do this, the performance, you start to then see occasionally a few little drop frames in the animations and whatnot. But once up and running, I do find it to be pretty good, but it doesn't feel quite as snappy as it was before. And that's understandable when you're running, especially something demanding. Like Netflix is not demanding, but when you do have a game or various benchmark apps, you will notice that start to happen there when I start to open up a few more things. Okay, you can see how the animations now have chopped down a little bit in their performance. And I do see this with other phones out there. So the multitasking is very good. That's the only real downside to it. Now, bringing up Chrome here, if I wanted to type and I can have it in that flex mode that a lot of people do like there, and I'm able to do this. You can have the top here, you can type and use this as a keyboard. In fact, I make that keyboard the full size. I just get this out of the way so you can prop it up like so, if you wanted to. So foldable phones, absolutely brilliant for people that are heavy multitaskers, and you're going to take advantage of that extra screen size we do get from the inner screen. For call quality, I do find that the N5 is very good, and the speakers, there's dual loudspeakers, they are good. Now the volume could be a tiny bit louder, that's my only real criticism from them. It's still a sufficient volume. I would give these speakers a 7 out of 10 rating. They're nothing exceptional, but for a foldable, considering how thin it is, they do sound fine. They are lacking slightly in bass too, I've noticed. But here's a sample at 100% volume. Looking at gaming now and stating the obvious, yes, it does run really smooth as expected for 16 gigabytes of RAM, Snapdragon 8 Elite, not a problem at all. And I do find it's more comfortable if I play it with the camera module at the bottom. It's not bad, and because it's rounded, it doesn't like cut into your hands or anything, and you've got the 2 loudspeakers free at the top, which does make sense to then use it in this position. Now the game, Genshin Impact here, does work just fine with this aspect ratio. And I do like the fact that it fits it perfectly. It's one of the few games that does. Other games, they looked a little bit stretched out. They look a little strange, but no, not here with Genshin Impact. Now, do you notice the throttling? It does throttle the performance down eventually, about, well, half the performance of what it originally starts out with. Do you notice it? Not really. It gets a little bit warm, but because OPPO throttles this so much, the chipset, the thermals are very good. So all up, great gaming experience, and having it with this screen and basically almost, look at that, almost no crease at all. Very, very immersive. Great gaming experience with the Find N5. Now over to the cameras and first up video performance. So with our OPPO Find N5, the outer camera and the inner are 8 megapixels. You get 4K 30, so no 4K 60 unfortunately. Good electronic image stabilization. Audio is good, and I find this quality to be acceptable. But if you want the 4K 60, you're going to have to use those rear cameras, and at least you can open the screen up and use the rear ones for vlog footage. Exactly what I'm doing now using the cover screen, and I'm using that 8 megapixel ultra wide. Now the ultra wide video quality, slightly disappointing. It's nowhere near as good as the main camera. We do have 4K 30 and 60. Now there's no 8K option even with the main camera here. I'll swap over to that 50 megapixel main camera. You can see straight away the quality has improved. You can see that difference compared to that 8 megapixel ultra wide. Now it's using both electronic and optical image stabilization. And I could go to the 3x zoom, but using it in this vlog kind of format using the cover screen, it's just going to be a little too close. So this is our main camera again, and I'll tap and go over to our 3x optical zoom, which is optical image stabilization and electronic image stabilization. So it looked quite steady there, and I can go to a 6x preset. You can see the quality has dropped off somewhat because that's now a combination of half digital and half optical zoom. Back to the 3x main camera, and then that 8 megapixel ultra wide, the worst performer when it comes to video quality. Looking at our cameras, the main camera does take a decent photo. Even in dark, depressing London, on a cold winter's day, they still came out good, these shots. And in clear conditions, you can see there's a lot of detail retained there. Hasselblad colors look pretty good with the main camera. And this shot I do like, good saturation. And of course, the weather did really help. Zoom cameras, when it is a clear day, very good results. And this is the 3 times, so then took it up to 6 times zoom. So it's a periscopic, 3 times optical. At the 6 times, it's half and half, so not bad. But when you decide to push the zoom even more, well, it does use a bit of AI to enhance the shots. And if you don't really crop in, at first glance, it looks like a decent photo, but there is a bit of noise, and you can tell that it's just filling in the gaps, really, with the AI photography. Selfies with the outer 8 megapixel camera with this one do look good for a foldable phone, and then the 50 megapixel rear camera with this portrait shot of my daughter here. Again, good results, good stitching, and I do like the way the skin tones look. However, there is a big con to the camera system, and a lot of you guessed it, the ultra wide, not good at all, very poor performance. This is not flagship level. I don't know what happened. Maybe they just couldn't fit in a good enough lens or sensor. But I'm not happy with the ultra-wide performance. It looks very muddy and just washed out photos. Low-light photography is okay, but it looks a little bit muddy, lacking details. There's a bit of noise. Overall, I find that the main camera is good, the zoom camera also good, but the ultra-wide and low-light performance certainly falling behind.
So in my years now of reviewing foldable phones, I would probably repeat my same thing and saying, this is now the best one. This is the best. And you could be tired of hearing that, but this is just the way things are. These are evolving a lot, foldables. And every brand that comes out with a new release does better than the others. They make them thinner, lighter, they improve the materials. And it's clearly evident here. When you go from the Find N3 now to the N5, it's a massive difference. Now, the N3 is a good phone. It's a little on the chunky side, but it's got a solid, great build to it. Well, I'm happy to say that the same build quality has been applied to this, but of course, so much more thinner at that 4.12 millimeters. Absolutely astounding that they've been able to do that. The reduction in the hinge, but using, of course, still titanium, and they have the silicon carbon batteries and this keeping that thickness down, but still having 80-watt charging that absolutely embarrasses Samsung with their charging speeds. Great battery life, stylus support on the outer screen, capacitive fingerprint reader works really well, 16 gigabytes of RAM, 512 gigabytes of storage. It covers pretty much everything. It's a phone that I think is almost the perfect bifoldable if that is what you're after. However, there's 2 things I noticed. The ultra-wide camera, no surprise really when people found out about the spec of that, like, is it disappointing? And from the video performance, from the shots of showing, I think it is a little. I hope they can improve upon that, maybe in the next generation. The other is multitasking performance. Not because it's got 7 cores. I have noticed that when I have 3 or 4 apps running, the animations start to show, well, drop frames. It sometimes feels a little laggy, and I just think it needs a bit more optimization there with the multitasking. So thank you so much for watching my review here of the foldable to get so far in 2025, the OPPO Find N5.